So the theme for today's program is connection before content. What is working well with online learning? As we begin our program, let's agree on this. Everyone, students, teachers, parents, administrators, we all want to reopen our schools. We all want to get back to normal-ish. And we are all working harder to make virtual and or hybrid learning work. Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District Superintendent Dr. Alex Chernis said in his February 3rd email message, quote, "It is our hope that the vaccination of people in tiers 1A and 1B, along with a decrease in COVID transmission rates, will incentivize the county to reopen all schools as soon as possible." Dr. Chernis also claimed, quote, "Students whose families chose our distant learning academics comprise of roughly 25% of our total district population are thriving. Diagnostic data shows that most of our students are learning at or above grade level despite this new way of learning, which is a tribute to our teachers, our parents, and most importantly, our amazing students who have adapted and succeeded in this very different learning environment." Today's discussion will focus on what has been working well this past year with online learning. Our panel of speakers will cover a broad spectrum of subjects, including their experience transitioning to online learning and the new technology applications, engaging students to be more problem solvers and independent, dealing with educational inequalities, working with cameras and audio being on or off, which student types may benefit most from online learning, and how they are planning to adjust students back to an in-person day. The meeting logistics will be each panel member will speak for up to 5 minutes. After all 6 panelists have spoken, they'll have the option to ask the other panelists questions. Then we'll take questions from the audience. And we have some preliminary questions folks sent in when they registered, and we'll be monitoring the chat for questions asked during the meeting. Instead of introducing all the panelists at once, I will introduce them before each one talks. So we will begin with our first panelist, and that will be Todd Schaborn. And let's first, we won't get into panelist mode until all the panelists have spoken. Okay, Todd Schaborn, he's the son of Palos Verdes Dems treasurer Al Schaborn. He's an Elk Grove Elementary 6th grade teacher. He teaches all subjects in the Elk Grove Unified School District, which is just south of Sacramento. Before the pandemic, Todd said technology wasn't his strength. Matter of fact, I think he called himself a Luddite. But now he thinks technology is his friend and has made him a better teacher. One benefit of online learning, Todd shared with me, is that he is able to invite students to virtual events outside of school hours, and they come. Please welcome Todd.
Thank you for having me today. Happy Sunday. So if I take it from there, I'm going to say, first of all, thanks for inviting me today. It was a privilege to talk to some Dems in the South Bay. You know, she approached me about this and said, you know, what's going well? What's going well in your district? What's going well for you as a teacher? And like she said, I've been teaching for 26 years, and I have a lot of colleagues who've been teaching for 5 years who've been speaking a different language and asking. A lot of our staff meetings, our grade level meetings involve discussions about Google Docs, Google Forms. Oh, just do this. I put it in the shared folder, and for so long, for years, I've been saying, oh, don't say shared folder to me. Don't say that. And now I can manage a shared folder, and I can make my own Google Doc. And I was kind of forced, you know, I was forced to do this in March when they sent us home. I think Elk Grove, my district, I think was the first one to close in the state. And real quick, I had to learn real quick. And those younger colleagues were super helpful. And now I don't feel like I'm in left field so much. I feel like I'm more, like I've just come to speed, you know, but because I had to. So that's been a definite benefit of this. When I come back, I think it's going to be a part of my teaching for the remainder of my career. And I think that, now I'm better equipped to finish out the last 5, 8 years of my career because I've had this experience. So I think that's a positive thing. The other positive thing I think that I've realized, I've been talking to some colleagues about, is I think that I have a better connection with my families than I've ever had. And that one of the challenges of school, I've always said that it's like a three-legged stool. You have the parents, you have the teachers, and you have the students. And the teachers and the students always know what's going on. The teachers know what's going on, and they hope the students know what's going on. But the parents, you're always trying to get them to participate, and you're always trying to engage them somehow. And I know my parents more this year than I've ever known them, because sometimes they will come on to Zoom and they'll participate in a class. Or last week I had family week. And so for family week, I invited parents to do PE with us, and we did Zumba with my class. And I gave you an extra fabulous shad buck if you had your family join us. And so I see more parents. I now have daily meetings, office hours from 2:45 to 3:15 on Zoom that are just open, and parents come in. And then before I would struggle to get to connect with parents. So I think that's another benefit for sure. So between the Google Classroom and my understanding of Google and Google Suite, my use of Google Forms, my organization there, and then my connection to parents, I think those are my biggest successes. So that's kind of it.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll
Sure.
go on to our next speaker. Our next speaker will be Megan Crawford. Megan is a Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District board member and a Paris Middle School 6th grade science teacher. She also teaches a cooking collective called Good Eats, and this is all at the Redondo Beach Unified School District. Megan has been an advocate for, as I said earlier, connection before content, and is working on her master's degree in public administration at USC. Please welcome Megan.
Hi, everyone. So thanks for having me today too, and happy Sunday. Todd, that's awesome to hear your experience, and fellow 6th grade teacher here. So good to connect with you today, although I just teach science. I used to teach math and science, but we got some things switched around a little bit, but nice to meet you. So for me, I kind of have two different perspectives going on, the Redondo Beach Unified perspective as well as the PV perspective. But I would say a common theme that I'm seeing throughout many districts is the connection before content approach, which Anne talked about. And I think that what that means is that teachers, we've always wanted to connect with our students. It is easier to make connections when we're in the classroom, but now that we are doing distance learning only, that's more of a struggle because we're not seeing them face to face every day, especially with this new group of students that we've encountered since the fall. We haven't met them yet until the different grade levels go back. And so the connection piece is about teachers connecting with students, but also the students connecting with each other. And so I think one benefit for me and my platform is having Zoom is that I can have students connect with each other in breakout rooms. And so that's been a really nice feature. It's kind of quick to put them into those rooms and the teacher can come around that way versus like in the classroom. Normally when you put students into groups, the teacher is walking around. Also the connection before content approach. I would say that is especially important this year because a lot of districts aren't necessarily seeing, or teachers aren't necessarily seeing the students as often as they were. So for example, in Redondo, I was seeing my students normally Monday through Friday, every day for an hour, and now we're switched to a block schedule. And so since we have kind of less time with students each day, we've had to focus on our essential standards and really figuring out what is the most important for students to learn before going on to the next grade level. And also what we've done in Redondo is on Mondays, we do have a stacked schedule, meaning I do see all of my classes on Monday, and they're about 30-minute periods. And Redondo has said, and especially at my school at Paris Middle School, that Mondays should be for wellness and mental health and also preparing kids for the week. And so there shouldn't be homework on Mondays. It should be more of like a wellness, mental health, connecting with students, checking in with them on that day, and giving them a little preview for the week. So I think that's been really helpful. And I think that if the schedule stays the same, that this is something we can bring forth in the coming years. Because no matter what happens, whether we're doing distance learning or we're in the classroom, students aren't going to learn unless they have some sort of connection with you. They want to trust you and, get to know you before they learn anything. And teachers, again, have always been doing that, but I think it's been more pronounced, especially this year. So I think that's an important approach. Some other interesting things that we've done in PV, which is really great, which I think that could potentially continue in future years, is we've offered kind of some different options for families that wanted to stay completely online this year. So we gave families the option in elementary school to complete an independent study option. And what that means is parents and students were checking in with the teacher about once or twice a week. And these were, families kind of chose that independent study option for various reasons, but it was more so like the students are being taught by the parents per se and just kind of checking in with the teacher. Maybe they have like really different, crazy schedules going on or something like that. But that was something that a lot of elementary school parents wanted. And so that independent study option has the potential to maybe continue in future years. We also gave the distance learning option for all families K through 12. And we have had about 25% of students who signed up for that. And so we think that at least for next year and in potentially continuing years, to continue to offer that distance learning option. A lot of students do actually thrive in that model for many different reasons. It could be because they are more distracted at school, or maybe there's a lot of mental health issues or anxiety that they don't like when they're in the classroom or at school. And so for quite a few students, it does work for them. And so we want to continue to offer that option for families, and that should be coming out soon as well, what that may look like for next year and again, potential future years. Some other districts have already done that. I know of at least one in Orange County that has always offered the distance learning option for high school students. They actually have like a different online high school, and students go completely online in high school and get their diploma from that online school. That could potentially keep families in our district who may want to do homeschooling or something like that. And so I think that's a way to keep our families engaged and keep students here in our district, is to continue to offer that online option for years to come. And then lastly, I think another thing that we've learned with what's working well for online learning, and this varies at different grade levels, is the mix between synchronous and asynchronous work. And so for maybe some of you who have had to do work online, if you're on Zoom all day, it is pretty draining. And so a lot of teachers are working and have been working on how to kind of divvy up the live online instruction face-to-face, but also give students the asynchronous time to basically work independently on their own off of a computer. And so I think that this, again, is something that we can continue to bring into future years, is that mix between live instruction and independent work on their own. Yeah, so I would say those are a couple things that are working in Redondo and PV.
Okay, thank you very much, Megan. All right, our next panelist is Baro Asorian. Baro grew up in Palos Verdes and earned a master's in education, technology, and business degree. Teaching is Baro's third career. First, he worked at sales, then an internet business, and then he got his teaching credential from Cal State Long Beach. Baro has been teaching for 6 years at Millikan High School in the Long Beach Unified School District. Currently, he is teaching classes in AP Macroeconomics and Marketing. Here is Baro.
All right. Thank you for inviting me. Welcome to everyone. And it was interesting to hear the perspective of Todd and Megan. And so Long Beach Unified School District, did it two different ways. First, in the first time on March 13th, when we went to distance learning, it was basically it was not very organized necessarily, but and it was mostly asynchronous. But what I found during that period of time was that some of my students that didn't do very well in the classroom thrived in the online environment, like Megan touched on, and I did speak to some of them, and partly it was just they didn't feel distracted, and because they had the time to do the work, and they didn't feel rushed. I think that made a big difference for those particular students. So I think that's a big positive, and I think it's important, going forward, as Megan said, how can we provide schooling for all of our different clientele in a way that meets their needs? I mean, because we're trying to differentiate as teachers, to meet the needs of our students. And so I think from this, one of the positives is to understand that there is a place for online, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. And that was one big positive. And then our previous superintendent, Steinhauser, he retired, and we got a new superintendent. And her big push, and there was some pushback, but her big push was that we were going to be synchronous, just like the regular schedule in high school, and we're a block schedule. And so, we would go from normally 7:50 to 2:40, and we each teach like 3 classes a day and have one conference period. And her big push was we are going to be synchronous, so that the kids have a normal school day, so there isn't drop off in learning, and that we have the time to do kind of the same things we would do in person. And I think that, at first, I thought that would be, a lot of Zoom. And, in the first couple of weeks it was, I mean, by the end of each week I was kind of exhausted, but I've come to the belief that she was right, that having the students come as a normal school day, I've seen my students thrive, and I was fortunate that a lot of my students, I had them as freshmen, and I have them as juniors in my marketing class. And my marketing class is very diverse. It's a diverse group of kids from high to low, and you have to sort of push them all. And so I do that, but I think having that time, that structure, has been positive. And I've seen, most of my students, not all, but I don't think my results after this first semester were vastly different than results that I would have in the classroom with a similar set of kids, in terms of the distribution of grades from A to F, but not too many Fs, but maybe a couple more Fs than I normally would be, because those 3 or 4 kids just didn't show up. But the vast majority of the kids actually show up every day. And the biggest struggle for some of them is to motivate them to do the work in class. And I don't do homework, and I think that's a positive. I just have like 20 or 30 minutes of direct instruction, and then they go on and do their work, and I'm there. And that's what our superintendent wants, is that we're there. So whether they're not, and I think that's a positive for the kids. That's a big positive, to know that we're there, and if they have questions, they can ask them. And so we're not live necessarily, me talking at them for an hour and a half. And I'm not a big lecturer. I'm more about, kids finding and learning information. I mean, I facilitate and I provide them with the information, and then it's more my marketing class, more project based. And then, of course, the AP class, it's a different set of kids. And again, my overall results in my AP class has been very similar to what it would be in a normal setting. And quite frankly, having the online and having everything be, using the fillable PDF and Google Docs and different methods, I think is beneficial for the kids. So overall, for me, though, I prefer to be, I mean, I'll be honest, like Ed said, I would rather be in the classroom. I'm tired of being on Zoom, but but we're pushing through, and I think the kids are gaining something from that as well, some character, because they're having to organize themselves and motivate themselves and get to Zoom on time and go to school each day. And some of the teachers do give homework. So those are all positive things. And then in terms of connection, the big thing that I did from the beginning, and the very first day, it was like, well, how do you take roll on Zoom? And it was because it was a little complicated and more time consuming. So what I started to do is I just started to call roll, and I don't ever do that in class. But normally I greet all my students as they come in the door and, say hello to them. And I was not able to do that. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to call roll every day. So I call roll every day. And so I have that connection. And so then if I have a kid that, is struggling, I have a moment with each of them to be able to say something. And that's a positive. So I've been able to build those relationships with my students and trust, and I've seen them, grow, just like I would in a regular setting. So I think kids can thrive online if you hold them to high expectations. And I do hold my students to high expectations. It's one of the reasons I became a teacher, after selling my business, was I really wanted to help kids thrive and understand the importance of doing well in school and going on to, some career. And so I push that and I hold them to it, and I see them grow. And so and I'm seeing that now through Zoom. And so that's definitely positive. So, other than, so that's my perspective.
Great perspective. Great. Lots of things we've learned there, and for each of all the speakers so far. So we're going to move on to our first student. This is Sarah Liu, and Sarah is a Palos Verdes High School senior. She's also on the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District Board as a student board member, working alongside Superintendent Dr. Alex Chernis. 30 students from PV High School and Penn High School, including Sarah, documented what they call the One Hill Project, helpful practices, recommendations to improve the overall student experience in this pandemic distance learning era. Sarah will share with us all these recommendations, and as she's sharing them, I put them on a slide for the audience to best follow her on it. So let's welcome Sarah.
Yeah, and thank you for having me.
And let's have Reggie share the slides.
Perfect. Okay, well, while he's getting that up, I think I'll just give a brief explainer as to what the One Hill Project is. So speaking kind of abstractly, when we ask the question, like, what's working well with online learning, I think something that's definitely helped is that students now feel like they have the opportunity to have a voice. So with the One Hill Project, me and Talisa Fabian, she's the student rep from Peninsula High School, we created a student committee of 30 students from both schools, and we work with our superintendent, Alex Chernis, and we meet with him kind of on a monthly basis to talk about different issues that are going on campus, different concerns that we have. Sometimes we use it to, get clarification on things like that. And the content of the meetings kind of change depending on what, our learning climate is like. So it's been a really great way for students to feel like they have some control or they have some voice in their education. So one of the first things that we did as a group was put together this thing called the best practices list. And what it was kind of just a list of things that kids found were helpful to their learning from the first semester, as well as some things that kids didn't necessarily like all too much. So for example, some of the helpful practices included small breaks between activities, especially at PV, we have 2-hour classes. So having those small breaks were super important. things like breakout rooms and channels with small groups. So that way we got to know our classmates a little bit better. Having open conversations and checking in with students regularly was also super important. And a lot of kids found that when their teachers made that extra effort to try and get to know them, whether it's just asking a silly question to take attendance at the beginning or, greeting each student and taking attendance, that was something that really mattered. And that's what kids really pick up on when they reflect on their online learning experience, their connection with their classmates and with their teachers. And then also, promoting mental health services, which has been something kind of at the forefront of everyone's minds recently. And then finding creative ways to educate. For example, online games like Kahoot, that's been super popular with kids. Kahoot is like this online quiz game where the questions appear on the computer, and then on your phone, you can press a button. And it's like a little competition between your classmates. And it's a fun way to kind of reinforce the lesson and things like that. So with this best practices list, we thought it was super important to try and get that out to the teachers. And even if, they had their disagreements or they didn't necessarily agree with everything on that list, well, at the very least, what we hoped is that this list would at least open up communication between students and teachers. So between the best practices list and then even doing student surveys with the One Hill project, that's been something that we've been pushing super hard, is making sure that students have the opportunity to put, their feelings out onto paper or virtually, get their feedback as to what learning has been like for them, whether that's tech issues, Wi-Fi issues, things that they find are kind of impeding their learning environment. And then having the opportunity at these board meetings to, take feedback from both the One Hill project and then just the general student body as a whole, getting that feedback out, to the public, to the parents, teachers, and the board has been super important. So the opportunity for students to have a voice has definitely been something that's worked well with online learning. What also has been working super great is that we've been able to have more frank conversations about mental health, whether that's, with their classmates or with their teachers, even teachers just checking in and promoting mental health services with their students. That's definitely been something that's really worked well. Moving things to online learning has made it kind of more difficult because we aren't able to see each other, like face to face and check in with each other. So it's kind of forced us to get creative, and it's really given students the opportunity to get creative themselves. So for example, there's a student who created a Discord server where kids can join and then chat with each other about how they're doing. And Discord, I won't give you guys the full spiel as to what it is, but Discord is usually used for video games, and people use Discord to text each other about video games. But the fact that our students have, have been like showing their own innovation, things like that, to try and find solutions to these different problems has been super great. And then also programs like ASB, which is our student body, have been doing such a great job about making sure that students are staying connected, whether that's through Spirit Weeks and then other online activities. At Penn, they had this coffee house where students were able to, sing songs, and kids got to listen in on their classmates singing, online comedy performances, and then even opportunities where kids will post, their favorite sunset picture they've taken or their favorite song on Instagram. Those are all just super small things that, in the larger scheme of things don't seem like they would make a difference, but they really do. So at the end of the day, all these small little pieces come together and have built definitely a more enriching online experience. So yeah, that's kind of what's been working well from a student's perspective.
Okay, did you want to also give your own personal, how you're doing?
Sure. I mean, as a student, I feel like this year's been going pretty great, as well as it can be. At times, homework can be a little bit confusing just because everybody is still adjusting to online schooling. But within, with all of my with all my teachers, they've been super understanding. And I think that, it's been kind of like a bad situation, but as a consequence, everybody has become more open and more willing to work with each other and, try and find solutions together. So overall, it's been a pretty positive experience.
Okay. And you've had to, this is your last year, so you've had to get into college.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a crazy year.
Crazy year. Okay, we'll move on to our next panelist. Our next panelist is Brent Kuykendall, and Brent has been principal at Palos Verdes Peninsula High School since 2018. He was an educator for about 20 years and then transitioned to the administration side. Brent was assistant principal at Maryless Intermediate, associate principal at PV High School, principal at Ridgecrest Intermediate, and principal at Maryless Intermediate. So now he's a principal at a high school. So Brent earned his doctorate degree in education in 2018 with a dissertation focused on trust between teachers and principals. As the Peninsula High School principal, Brent has dealt with teacher negotiations, student-led walkouts, and now the pandemic. So please welcome Brent.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for the panel, for the invitation to be here, and for all the other panel members. It's great hearing so many voices. Shout out to my middle school peeps. If you spend time as a middle school teacher, nothing against high school teaching, it takes a special person to connect with a 11 to 13-year-old hormonal boy or girl. And I spent a lot of time in there doing that, and I loved every minute of it. I know you've heard a lot of voices. I'll try to be succinct in what I share with you. First and foremost, this pandemic has been hands down the most difficult thing I and every educator have ever faced in their career. I've been doing this for 22 years. And when you look at a situation where we're faced with challenges that no one, teacher, student, parent, administrator, board member, superintendent has ever faced, and then have to come up with solutions, creates a anxious, nervous time for everybody. But a big shout out to all of the teachers. The only reason that there has been success is first and foremost for our teachers. They have had to relearn how to teach. Doesn't matter if they were year 3 or year 33. I heard over and over again from veteran teachers, these are teacher of the year. Oh my gosh, I just don't have the confidence I had before the pandemic. I used to consider myself a good teacher, and now I don't even know what to do anymore. And it wasn't from a lack of effort. These people were putting time in and putting hours upon hours, more than they'd ever done before, and still being like, I don't know if I'm even doing a good job. The second piece is our students. Sarah has been phenomenal. I don't know how Sarah has a free minute in her day between board meetings and One Hill Project and trying to get into colleges, which anyone would be lucky to have her. Her and all our other seniors, but all the students have just blown me away. The best part of my job, and any educator is going to understand this, is seeing kids and interacting with kids. And this pandemic has taken that away from so many of us, right? Or you've had to do it differently. Varro, I loved your talk about greeting kids at the door and greeting them virtually online. I think that's so critical, right? Megan's comment about connection before content. Yeah, if they don't connect with you, they're not going to listen to a word you say. So these are all fantastic things. So I love kind of putting the pieces together. But I'll just kind of highlight a couple things. I think everyone has been putting time and a half in to get 3/4 out. and that wears on everybody. I know with the recent news, I have felt invigorated with the vaccine rollout, with the news from Dr. Chernis last week that, hey, as long as things are safe, we could get kids back in classes soon. That's exciting to everyone. It has some angst along with it because we've been out so long and there are so many questions we don't know answers to. But what's on the horizon is very exciting. Going back to and I have some notes here, so give me a second as I scroll down here. Kind of transition to online learning. Peninsula High School uses Microsoft Teams. We're a Microsoft district, but some departments in the spring really made that transition, but over the summer and to start the year, we all shifted and adopted Teams as our platform. And it was a very steep learning curve. And I think Todd said it earlier, you know, it's like people that were not tech savvy, you got force fed to be, you know, learn that tech. And they have, and I've had teacher upon teacher come back to their credit to have said, you know, because of my colleagues, because of my time, I am now doing things I never thought I would do before to the benefit of my students. And I'm now a better teacher today than I was back in March of last year because of how much they have almost forced themselves to learn. But this online platform, you know, we've heard some of these things, breakout groups, assigning and turning them in homework completely online. So you can post an assignment, it can be a doc that you work on and submit it right back to the teacher. So it's paperless. And then the teacher can give comments and give that right back to the teacher or to the student. Presentations with guest speakers from around the world. Like we get, it doesn't matter if I'm talking about my track coach getting an alumni that's an Olympic athlete that gets to come and speak to all his track or other guest speakers. It's like, that has just opened the world that before it was like, well, maybe if this person comes in the area or you work something out with a handful of people that could do a Skype, you know, and that was something, but it really opened the world in regards to the Kahoot and the other type of live polls that these different platforms can do. So you can instantly, as a teacher, throw a question up there, hey, A, B, C, or D, or true or false, and you get instant feedback. Has been fantastic. Recording lessons and then playing them for later has been a great, and I know lots of teachers, some teachers do this every day, some teachers do this with certain aspects of it. But then for students to be able to go back, or if they miss class, right? Maybe they were out because something happened, and then to be able to see that. The access to education for the ones that are really doing it has really increased immensely. And then the flexible kind of turn-in times, which is good and bad. Sarah knows this. We've had a discussion. Megan knows this. There's an ongoing discussion. But, you know, we're used to turning homework as soon as we walk into a classroom. But there is some good about saying, hey, you have between now and Monday to turn it in. And I don't like Sunday to Monday for turn-in times, but, you know, and to have that flexibility so you can really make the schedule work for you. And I think this was mentioned, I think Varro mentioned this, maybe Todd mentioned this. It's meeting the kid where they are, right? It's not so much the student having to meet where the teacher is. The teacher can kind of meet the student halfway. And that's been a big deal. Couple last things, and I'll wrap it up here. Transitioning back to in-person, like I said, it is very exciting, but there are a lot of moving parts to this. So everything from having everyone manage self-screening pieces to mask wearing to socially distance on campus. You know, pretty much all campuses now have some students back on in small cohort groups. We currently have an intervention cohort, special education cohorts. We have after-school athletics going on. On Friday, I think we had probably between over 800 students on our campus, athletics wise and all different sports. And it was, you know, it was invigorating. But there's a balance there of making sure that people are doing that and building those connections, but also staying safe. So I could go on and talk more, but I know there are other speakers. So, you know, those are just a few of the things we're working on. But once again, I want to say I'm incredibly proud of every single teacher in my district, and even some of the ones I've got to meet through this and hear more about what Megan's doing in Redondo, even though I talk to them a lot. It's always neat to hear more things, and to our students who are have really transitioned, even though I think as adults, it's tougher for us to transition as is for the, you know, the young people. They seem to get on it much faster than us. But thank you for the opportunity to talk, and I look forward to answering more questions. And
I'm sure there will be a lot more questions. So we will move on to our last speaker. Our last speaker is Lisa Larson. Lisa is a comprehensive counselor at Maryless Intermediate School. She Zooms with about 8 to 12 students per day, providing guidance and counseling. She sponsors anti-tobacco and anti-vape events and sponsors extracurricular club activities. Lisa and her fellow counselor regularly update the PTSA, that's the Parent Teachers Association, with how the students are doing. And please welcome Lisa. So now we all need wellness.
Well, thank you. And this is like a family reunion. I'm seeing people that I have not seen in a very long time, like Mrs. Perkins and my old boss, Mr. Kuykendall, and Megan was actually a student of mine, and Mrs. Meester and everybody, Mrs. DeLassa. So it's really wonderful. Thank you. So I'll try to go quickly. I think we hit the road running as counseling department in the district in June. We realized that our priority was going to be, we didn't know what to expect with student mental health needs, and a big focus on how do we support parents, because we knew that this was going to be a challenging time for parents to be able to be working at home oftentimes, or actually the anxiety that might be produced if the parent was not working at home, and going out, and who was going to supervise the student. So we created a lot of counseling lessons that were based on keeping the connections, a lot of student check-ins. Every 2 weeks, we do send out forms that will pose a variety of questions. And one of the benefits by using the form is we're getting a response from 98% of our students on every counseling check-in that we do. Some are a little more verbal than others, but we are using that data to create more programs. So basically, when it starts of what was your biggest accomplishment, what have you learned through COVID, we're trying to get the students to see their resiliency pieces. But then we also look at what's your biggest challenge. And in the beginning, to be honest, it was very technology-based answers, Wi-Fi, distractions at home, not understanding how to submit the work. Trimester 2, we started to see a little bit more of, the frustrations of just when I miss my friends, before they were really focused on trying to understand how to do this. And the teachers have really done a phenomenal job. And I'm glad Sarah had mentioned that she appreciates it, because I do see the behind the scenes of teachers trying to create their own check-ins and their own connections with students. In middle school, it's a little more of a challenge. I think we have a very big self-conscious age where speaking in class is almost like pulling teeth at this point. They're camera shy, they're apprehensive to make a mistake online. They're getting a little more comfortable with that. But we're trying to celebrate their executive functioning skills that they are learning, the time management. They were so used to a bell system where the bell rang and this is what you did. And now they're creating their own awareness of time management, organization. So basically lots of lessons that we've launched, lots of counseling, through Zooms, and identifying which students just kind of need encouragement based and excellence awards. We still continue to do like a student of the month kind of thing. And those that really need deeper levels of mental health services, such as weekly counseling sessions and possible outside resources that are there. So there have been some good things that have come out of it, and we're trying to get the students to see that while also respecting their frustrations and how they're feeling. So I do feel that we've gotten to know them very well by their reports to us, and hoping they recognize us when we go back on campus. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Speaking of excellence rewards, this is the time when Reggie's going to put us all in a panel. So while he's doing that, I just wanted to, I'm pretty sure I read this, and maybe Brent, you can comment on it, that Penn just came in, I don't know, second on the decathlon.
Correct. Yeah. So we have a academic decathlon team, and they just yesterday placed second. It was pretty phenomenal. And I will say that academic decathlon, but in addition to like Model United Nations, MUN, speech and debate, these are some of these organizations that used to travel all over the place and compete. And these students have been competing the entire time. And it has been pretty amazing, the access. I think my Model United Nations teacher, Dr. Demetria, who's been at Peninsula High for a number of years, was like, we've been in more contests this year than in any year, because they don't have to worry about traveling. They can sit as long as they have a Wi-Fi link. So that's been a real plus.
Okay, so we're going to transition now to where you guys can ask each other questions, and then I have questions that came in early, and we'll have questions that are going to come up here on chat. So I thought it was really nice how you summarized, Brent, what everyone else was saying. So do you have a question, or any of you have a question for somebody else before I proceed?
The only question I love hearing is from, and it can be the teachers that we have on here, or even Lisa as a counselor, is like, what have you been most proud of that you have learned, and as you've transitioned to this? Like, what's, you know, I know with the tech piece, Todd said that, but has there been anything specifically, like a certain program that you learned that, you know?
You all have to unmute yourself.
I can start with that question. So in Long Beach, we invested in Canvas, which is a learning management system. And so instead of it being sort of piecemeal with Google and the Zoom, Canvas, we still use Zoom, but Canvas will eventually be the piece that handles everything from the students' work being turned in, student access to work, and then also attendance and so forth. So it'll be one comprehensive program. And I think that's been beneficial. I mean, I was already online before we went online. I mean, in terms of using computers in my classroom, and having, I mean, I was already 100% Google Docs, Google Classroom in my marketing class anyway. So for me, I'm a master's in education technology. Learning Canvas and having Canvas, I think is a great new tool. And you can do everything through Canvas, including tests and quizzes, and it's going to be wonderful over time.
I think Canvas is the platform they use at the community college system too, which is a great transition then from high school too.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have a question for each other, or should I just dive into the questions? Okay, why don't you all unmute, because you'll probably forget, and I think it'd be okay. So I'm going to start. We're just going to go in the order that I got the questions from people before they came on board, and then the questions that are coming up today. So the first question came from Helena Barry. How do we explain to children? Oh, well, actually, I'm going to skip that one. Sorry about that. The first question came from Carol. I would like each of the teachers to share how they feel about returning to in-person instruction if they are not given the opportunity to be vaccinated.
I'll go. Yeah, so I actually just found out this week that Redondo Beach in 6th grade, we're going to be back March 9th. So obviously, I would think anyone might be hesitant about that. I'm obviously looking forward to having access to the vaccine starting March 1st. So I would hope at least at some point in March I could get my first one and then 3 to 4 weeks later get my second one. I think it is scary. You know, I'm going to be back on March 9th no matter what happens, even if I don't get my first vaccine by then. I think a lot of teachers would feel more comfortable getting it. But with the case rates going down, as well as, you know, short access to the vaccine, hopefully in a few weeks, I think that makes a lot of teachers feel better, myself included. So
I can answer it as well. You know, fortunately, I live in Long Beach, and Long Beach has prioritized vaccines for teachers, and so they've been offering vaccines over the last 30 days, and I think they've vaccinated at least 2,000 to 3,000 of the staff at LBUSD. And one of the teachers was hawking down all the sites, and there was a place in Carson at the Home Depot Center, I guess it is, and I was able to sign up. So I got my first vaccine on Friday, and I'll get my second vaccine on March 19th. And Long Beach isn't going to be reopened. They're going to open for the lower grades. We got the email, you know, as long as everything stays the way it is and gets better, March 26th for I think K through 5. And then after that, on April 19th, they want to bring back the seniors first, which I think is an interesting thing, but I think they want to get them on campus to enjoy the last month of school. And then 6th to 8th grade comes back like on the 20th, and then the other grades sort of after that. So that's as long as, and I think a lot of teachers are apprehensive about this, to be honest, because of, you know, not knowing the details of what will in person be like, because it's certainly not going to be, you know, the way it is, and from what we've heard, for some, if it's going to be a hybrid model, we're really still going to be Zooming from the classroom. The kids are going to be in class, half the kids are going to be on Zoom, and the other half's going to be at home, they're going to be on Zoom. And so, you know, I talk to my students and like, they're not really that excited about Zooming from the classroom. And one of them is like, no, I'm not going back. I'm just going to stay online. So, you know, so I'm apprehensive, but I'm less apprehensive now that I'm be vaccinated, you know, fully, because I had COVID in January. I got very sick, and, you know, it's not a pleasant experience. Fortunately, it was not a severe case. So anyway.
Up here in Elk Grove, everyone's been vaccinated or had an opportunity to be vaccinated in the last 3 weeks. So I was vaccinated 3 weeks ago, and I'll have my second shot soon. So it's funny because I don't think we're going to go back till the end of March. And like you said, we're going to do a hybrid model where some students will come back Monday, Wednesday, some students will come back Tuesday, Thursday, and then Friday will be distance learning for everyone. So again, this tool is going to be something that's going to be around for a long time. We're going to be doing this all the time. It's already set into our calendar for next year what days are going to be distance learning days. But of my class, and we're also offering in Elk Grove, we're offering parents the opportunity to stay on this model if you want to continue on the distance learning model. And I think it says something that of my class of 30 students, only 4 students want to come back to the traditional, to the hybrid model. So 26 people want to just keep going with what we're doing. So,
you know, and that makes people that students want structure.
yeah.
And by this transition in the middle or towards the end of a semester, disrupts the structure.
For sure.
And if I may speak just real quick, we have student cohorts on our campus now, and in watching how they act, and assuming everybody's been so well trained, unfortunately, for so long, I do see a great sense of responsibility our students are showing when they're on campus in terms of keeping the masks on, social distancing. So they've got it dialed down. I'm comfortable going back.
Okay, I'm going to move on to another question. And again, we can address some of these as you can come back and make another comment if you'd like. This one came from Ellen Perkins. Parents have expressed concerns that there are significant learning gaps resulting from last year's and this year's online teaching. What steps will be taken to assess those gaps, and what kind of remediation do you anticipate implementing?
I can speak for Peninsula and even PVP USD. We've used a common assessment tool called iReady at the basically K-12 levels. There's good and bad about it. It's not a perfect assessment tool. I see the smirk on Sarah's face. She's like, yeah, another test, gotta love it as a senior. I think our students are really good about doing the best they can, but it is one more test, right? I think, and then you want the students to do their best on it. So you kind of have a mixed bag of, if a student doesn't do well on that test, did they really just not try, or is there some type of learning gap? So I think we'll continue to evaluate where students are. I will say specifically for Palos Verdes, we're very fortunate because so many of our families, it's not an issue with having access to Wi-Fi. Not all of them, but majority of them have access to Wi-Fi. They've been able to get a device from the school and really have some access to their education. Where in maybe some other communities where they're not as affluent, or parents aren't able to be with them at home, that could be an added challenge. So the learning gap is real. It's definitely there. I think in communities like Palos Verdes and even Redondo Beach, Long Beach, and some of these other ones where maybe it's not as significant, and maybe some other communities.
Anybody else want to address that?
I don't know exactly what Long Beach Unified is going to do to address that. I mean, we're a very diverse district, not quite as diverse as LA Unified, but we're diverse, and I think at Milliken we just have a group of teachers that we're really focused on the learning of the students, and we're sort of all of one mind, and I think we're having good results at Milliken High School. But I do know some of the other high schools are having some struggles. And I mean, the biggest struggle, to be honest, is kids come to Zoom, but they do nothing. And you have to pull teeth. You can't get them to their camp. I mean, that's the biggest struggle. I mean, I don't have more absences than I had when I was in person. I just have to try harder to get all my students to do the work, and I accept it. Whenever they turn in your work, I'll take it, I'll grade it. I just want you to succeed, and I show them videos on time management. And so I mean, I think all the teachers are just going to have to band together and keep kind of a close eye on their students and see where they're at and give them the support that they need. And ultimately, I think kids are resilient. I think the vast majority of kids will be fine as long as we can get them back in school and on track, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'll just add one other thing from the Redondo perspective, especially the group of teachers that I work with in sixth grade, and I'll just use math as an example. Every year at the beginning of the year, we would always, as sixth grade math teachers, we look back at the fifth grade standards and see what the fifth grade essential standards were and kind of review that or bring that in at the beginning of the year to make sure that students understand those things before we moved on to the sixth grade curriculum. So I think that, next year and in coming years, again, teachers have already been doing this, and I'm sure that they're going to do it again, is look back at the previous year's standards, at least the essential ones, and at least do some sort of review, have some assessments, like formative assessments, to see where students are and reteach if necessary. Every subject is different with that, but definitely I think when teachers collaborate with each other, whether that's, the higher grade above them or the lower grade, to see, what students should learn this year in order to be successful for the next year, or what should have students learned in fifth grade to make them be successful in sixth grade, for example. I think that's things that teachers are already doing. They'll just need to do, a little bit more work to catch up with that. I know some of them already did at the beginning of the year, but it may just be, compounded on again next year too.
Okay, I'm going to take some of the questions that are coming in on chat. I'm not sure if I'll get them always in order, but so Kyle is a teacher, I think also in Long Beach. But anyway, he's asking, how do you deal with parent over-involvement? In other words, some of you talked about parents being on Zoom, but parent over-involvement, doing the work and telling the answers.
Well, I'll jump on that real quick. It's funny because that was like an oxymoron for a while at least at my school, parent over-involvement. But now, first of all, I'm going to be grateful if somebody will show up and participate. We have done like a math test or something, and Lauren's mom is sitting with her doing the math test. And there's hills I'm going to die on. And at the end of the day, I'm glad that Lauren's mom was there helping her with some math. And I don't know. I mean, there's the collaboration that students are doing with one another and with their families is all new. They're talking to each other. They're in Google Hangouts, or they're texting one another, or they're doing stuff together all the time besides the breakout room. And if I put them in a breakout room, they're going to still text somebody who's in a different breakout room. And so I suddenly don't have control of that, right? When I let them choose their breakout rooms, they're super happy, but then they might leave that breakout room and go bug somebody else. So then I get that little discipline piece. But I think ultimately for parent over involvement, I guess that happens. You guys probably see it in high school. Like, did Johnny write the essay, or did Johnny's dad write the essay? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for parents that are overly involved. I'm just grateful that they're involved.
Can I extend that to how do you deal with your grading at that point in time? Because obviously you have to input grades. And if we were in person, you'd know if that parent did or did not have input. They can have input in the night, they have input when they're not there, but actually writing the physical essay.
Right.
What do you do at that point in time?
What I've done with the things that I know that students haven't done, you know, like I'm a sixth grade at an elementary school, and when students are doing things that I know they haven't done, you know, if I just highlight what they've done and put it in Google, I can usually find the source. If it's clearly not on Google and it's clearly done by mom and dad, then I might have a conversation with them. I've had 2 conversations with students, not with their parents, with students saying, I know this isn't your work, and I've marked it down. I didn't give anybody an F for that, but I'm just, you know, it's a resource. A parent is a resource, and I have to train them in 6th grade how to use that resource appropriately. And so I think it would be a bigger challenge in high school. I do think that's something you've always had to deal with in high school, probably more so.
You know, we've had a handful of cases that have come to my attention that we've had to work with where, you know, teachers can see that some work that got churned in does not look like what the student had submitted other times, and it's pretty clear. And like Todd said, you know, we want to work with families at the end of the day because, you know, I don't know if I'd rather have a parent do it than nothing come in, but you know, you do want to have them kind of work through those processes. So we also have, so it's kind of, the biggest challenge, I said this before, is that in person, right? If a student ever submitted work that wasn't theirs, no matter if they copied it or whichever, it's all, the teacher could have a face-to-face conversation. You can do it in a small breakout room, but like then if an administrator got in, you'd have a conversation before bringing a parent in. We can do that all virtually, but it does feel different, you know? So for us, there's no perfect solution. We work with parents. We appreciate their support. And sometimes a parent does get a little sideways because they really want their child to get that good grade or they're sick of seeing them struggle. And so they maybe give them a little more help than we would really like them to do. But I don't see it as it's not a widespread issue. I think parents have their own challenges, right? They're working, they're paying bills, they're taking care of the other kids. So it's just something we work through.
I haven't had any, I don't think I've had parents that are doing my students' work, to be honest. I mean, I don't assign homework in my marketing class. We do it in class. So, I mean, it's like half synchronous and then the other half is them doing their independent work, and it's project based. And so, and I have a pretty good sense when they turn something in, you know, and I make them cite sources. I mean, it's not an English class, but I force them to follow, you know, English protocols and, you know, do the things that you're supposed to do. And, you know, like Todd said, you know, if it doesn't sound like the kid wrote it, you can just highlight it. And, you know, I don't make that big a deal out of it, but I do let them know, and I don't give them a good score. And most of the time, you know, they change their ways moving forward. And you know, some things through Zoom you just can't deal with every single detail. You know, you can only do the best that you can, and some kids are not going to be honest, and you're not going to be able to figure that out. But you can't control the things that you can't control. Otherwise, you know, everyone's just going to pull their freaking hair out, and we're going to go crazy. And I think we just have to be, you know, just kind of go with the flow and think the best of our students. And when we catch it, and we move on.
Anyone else? I'm going to continue with one of Kyle's questions, and you can say it yourself, Kyle, but this has to do with online and hybrid. So, you know, where some of you are going to be coming back to school, they're still going to have a hybrid setting. And how he was directing it at Utah, but any of you, how have you managed your hybrid setting, and how will you continue to manage your hybrid setting as in-person class continues?
Can I add to that? It actually is about the double amount of work that you do. So you have to plan for brick and mortar setting, and then you have to plan for online setting. Is that correct?
Correct.
So it's actually a double amount of work.
But I'll be teaching in my class. What's going to happen in 2 weeks, about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, is I'll be teaching with a microphone on and a headset, and I'll be talking to a computer like this, and there will be 13, 15 kids over here. Well, in my class, if somebody would come back, I'd have that many. And then they'll switch. So I'll pretty much be doing the same thing, but I'll just be watching them. So they won't be watching Netflix, and because I'll be watching that. The other kids, I don't know.
So you're supervising them? You're not planning for instructing them?
I am going to instruct them, and I'll be writing on the whiteboard, and I'll be giving some instructions. Right. But for the most part, I'm not going to gather small groups. They're not going to get close to one another. They're going to be 6 feet apart all the time. I'm just going to be. I'm going to be talking to this while I look over here and talk to this group, and then I'll talk to some over here, and then it's going to be different. The thing is, though, they're going to leave early. They're going to leave at 12:15. My school day ends at 2:30. So what I'll do, and what I'm doing now, is in my asynchronous block from 2:50 to an hour and 40 minutes at the end of the day, I'm available. So I'm on like this, and I always bring back a group of at least 6, usually but I invite everybody. So I usually have about 11 kids that come back, and we do this. We do whatever you want to work on. So if you're struggling with something, I'm available, and let's do it. And I will invite you back specifically at some point. If I see you're struggling, you're invited back.
So I don't know exactly what they're going to do for the younger grades, but at high school, from what I understand, we're on a block schedule, and we go odd and even. And because our superintendent really wants everybody to be, having a full school day, that was her big push. I guess that's what she believes will, keep the kids from having a learning loss. Is the time online or in classroom. But my understanding is we're going to have half the kids every other day, and I'm going to still be on Zoom. I'll be in my classroom sitting at my desk, and there'll be 14 or whatever number of kids decide to come back, and they will Zoom, and the ones that don't come back will be on Zoom at home. So period 1 will still be period 1 with all the same 32 or 34 kids, but half will be in the classroom and half will be at home. And so what I do now isn't going to change at all. I'm just going to I'll be in my classroom rather than at home, and I'll have, 12 to 18 kids in my room. And I think the benefit of that, to be honest, are the kids that are falling through the cracks, that are just not coming to school, that would have come to school if we were in person. We're going to grab those kids, and I think that's the benefit. But the actual way we're learning now isn't going to change that much, because it can't. Because I can't get up and run around the classroom and get all excited and put them in groups. So and I don't think the kids are that excited about that, to be honest. They want normal school. They want to come back and sit with their friends and go to lunch and do all the things. And when I tell them what it's going to be like, they get sad. So, it's going to be a transition. And, and I think it could be a disruption. I don't know. It's, there's just a lot of unknowns.
I teach in LA, and we're not open yet. There's pressure to reopen, and it's not clear how. So that's why I was curious how hybrid was going, just so I could plan forward.
And in my experience, the Redondo and PV elementary model is slightly different, where it's kind of, well, at least the PV model, it's half and half. And so half of the students come in the morning and the other half come in the afternoon. And so if the students are not in class during the synchronous time, they have asynchronous work to do, or like enrichment type of activities when they're not in school. And so for those teachers that are doing that, it is somewhat of a double work, I guess. It just depends on the grade level, the enrichment. There's there's music options and art options and things like that. But they have they're only looking at the students in front of them at that time, whereas the other half are doing asynchronous. As far as 6th grade, in a few weeks when I come back, that is to be determined what that looks like, because as of right now, the instructions from the LA County Department of Public Health are for 6th grade to follow the elementary rules. And so For a lot of sixth grade, we're at the middle school level where the students do have, 4 to 6 teachers. And so we're not sure at this point what that looks like, but we should know more next week.
Okay, I want to continue with another question. This is from one of our a parent of a student, Liz. She's asking, and I think this is more for Brent and Lisa, how do the schools plan to integrate the kids once school opens? Current sixth graders and high school freshmen will not be familiar with their school community. So we have a transition here in PV from 5th to 6th to, elementary to middle, and then 8th to 9th. So how will that happen?
I can start with that if I may. I have a group of students, leadership students, that have been in the process of creating virtual presentations for the 5th grade class. So they're going to be speaking about virtual and in-person instruction, like what the campus offers, what the opportunities are. They're going to go back again a week later and play a Kahoot game, which Sarah was kind enough to explain to everybody, and kind of reinforce what they learned, where to get supports, what to do if you forgot your homework, just basic things that we would normally teach them. The 6th graders that will be coming on to our campus in a few weeks, we have started to advertise, and so far we have about 70 kids that have signed up for a campus tour and a scavenger hunt. So it will be supervised by Merrill West adults, sponsored by our booster club, and following COVID protocols and having the waivers signed and all that. Students will then be led by an adult and shown the various places. Where do you go for tech support? What do you do after you change for PE? Real basic stuff that they would have normally received. They will be signing up for that and having that hopefully right before they come on board. We're trying to get as many as possible, and keeping in with the amount of 1 to 4 adult to student ratio. So the web, we do have something called Web, and high school has Link Crew. Those are where, for Web, I can speak to, it's 8th grade mentors that were selected and trained over the summer. And they have been connecting with the 6th graders every single week on our campus. They hosted what we called Lunch Lounge. So they came in and they had, and any 6th grader could have gone to Lunch Lounge, and they play games and they just chit chat. So we're trying to keep the connection, and they kind of push out, similar to what a morning announcement would be. So if you wanted to be in book club, or if we have all about anime club, they're letting them know the dates and the times, and then the students are making that bond. And if they have questions, not only can they reach out to the counselor or teacher, but they also have 8th graders that they're relying on.
Yeah, Lisa answered the question for all of us. Thank you, Lisa. Just working with her. We have Link Crew, which it basically links, and so does PV High. I see Sarah nodding her head. It's juniors and senior leadership type students that have signed up for this, that have already committed to being paired up and have done virtual setting and virtual meetups with incoming freshmen. So that I'm sure we will lean heavy on that. We wouldn't have a typical all school assembly. I don't know when that's going to happen again. I can't wait to pack the gym. I just don't see it happening in the next few months. But we'll have to find other ways where they can do small groups meet in person, and other virtual opportunities to get either in-person tours or virtual tours so they know where to go.
Yeah, and I can, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I can speak to Link Crew a little bit. My brothers are actually freshmen in high school, so I've got to see what it's been like for them to start school virtually. And Link Crew has always been out in full force every year, whether it's giving tours, but especially this year, they made such a good effort of making sure to call every home of the freshman students to make sure to introduce themselves. And I'm sure that, that same support system is going to be there next year. So the freshmen and the incoming 6th graders are definitely going to be in good hands.
Very good. I just wanted to add, I think it was Brent who mentioned this, but when you've had programs, you've been able to get special speakers from all around the world. I mean, I just think that would be, we're talking about what would continue here in terms of best practices from online. And just like here, we're having a meeting and you all are together. And I don't know if I would have, Todd wouldn't have flown down, and I don't know if Bara would have driven up, but it has given us an opportunity to have people from all over come to our meetings as well and to participate. And I would hope that would continue too. So I'm going to go, this goes to you, Brent. This is from Dwight. He wants you to comment on regarding the effect of college applications on your high school students.
I know there's been lots of questions in regards to acceptance rates. Has that changed? Standardized testing has changed, right? Schools have gone from test optional to test blind. And for those people that haven't heard that term, just real quick to explain that, typical tests, ACT, SAT, these tests have changed over the years, but these are typical tests that students have taken. But access to those tests has been very difficult. Depending on what you have, opportunity wise. So a lot of institutions, public and private, some have said test optional, meaning, you don't have to submit a test score. We're just simply going to go by your application and your transcript. And even more have gone test blind, which test blind is the one I truly support. The difference is when you say test optional, behind the scenes, are you putting a benefit over someone that submits a score that is good versus someone that doesn't submit a score at all? So test blind is meaning we don't look at test scores at all. So I think the college application process is going to change forever. Is there still going to be this testing standard? Or how is that going to change? AP testing has gone different, right? Last year, AP went all virtual. Everything was done at home. And I don't know if Sarah took any APs, but it was different, right? There were time constraints and there's a lot of work behind the scenes. This year, AP testing, that's an advanced placement class, if you don't understand that term, where you can, if you get a score it's a score 1 to 5, if you get a score 3 or higher, you can actually earn college credit for a high school class. This year, they're either going to do it in person. Students are going to have choices. And right now, high schools across this country are trying to figure out what that looks like and at Peninsula specifically, we give something like 1,500 tests. And so we're trying to get that organized right now. But the data behind getting into school, I have not seen any data that has shown anything different besides consistent acceptance rates to what we've seen in the past. And it's really too early because right now you only have the early action, early decision numbers in. Students, and Sarah knows this better than others, are applying to schools just like they always have. And maybe their list is just as long, longer, or shorter, but colleges are still accepting kids. That hasn't changed. And they still need kids to pay for their professors and all that. So that's the best I can answer your question. But if there's a follow-up, feel free, or if Sarah wants to add something in regards to her experience, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, it's been super confusing for a lot of the juniors and seniors just because we've kept on having new information coming in from all these different colleges about their testing policies, so on and so forth. But our college and career centers at our high schools, both at Penn and PV, have been doing such a great job of making sure that all the seniors are informed of, the different options that they have regarding testing, helping with essay writing and things like that. So, it might be kind of a confusing process, but there are definitely resources on our campus that make it a lot easier for students. And I think regarding testing, like the ACT and the SAT, it's been really great to see colleges either go test optional or test blind. For some of my classmates, they haven't had the opportunity to take the SAT at all. And I know some kids have gone to crazy lengths to just take the ACT. I know kids who have driven up to Utah and other states like that to try and take a standardized test, which, shouldn't be a thing. But, the fact that more colleges are open to the idea of just doing away with standardized testing as a requirement for their college applications is definitely a step in the right direction.
Sarah, thank you for mentioning our College and Career Center. Yeah, I think the 2 high schools in PVP USD specifically, they have actually joined forces, our College and Career Center, to do virtual settings, and their numbers of participation and attendees has quadrupled since past years. Just because of the access, right? They don't have to get in their car and drive to school on Tuesday night at 7. They can be home and turn it on and be in their kitchen still making dinner with their 3 other kids that they have. So it's a big deal. Sarah, thank you for sharing that.
So we've had like financial aid workshops. There's a day for students. It was a couple hours long after school, but it basically, there's a workshop that walked you through like every step of the college application process. So our CCCs have definitely been like an invaluable resource for us.
Speaking of testing, I did miss a question earlier. I think it came from Connie. It had to do with how do you guys do tests in your classes?
Well, me personally, in my marketing class, it's project based. So they submit more written work. And in my AP macro class, I set up the test and I do it at AP Central. So they do it online. And, you know, I just made all the points in my AP class. Usually the assessments are the more highly weighted. Everything is just equal weighted. And, you know, at the end of the day, they do a number of things in the AP class that I can, you know, see that they're learning. So, you know, they take the test, and I you know, hope that they are being honest. But you know, again, it's just out of my control. I mean, you cannot manage something that you can't manage. You know, you're just, it's not a classroom. You can't look over their shoulder and see what they're doing. So, you know, the truth, you know, ultimately when they take the AP exam, then I'll know what was really going on. But in April last year, the kids that were asynchronous, they actually did better on the AP exam than the kids that I had in the classroom in the fall. So I don't know. Time will tell.
Anyone else?
And if I may speak, our math teachers have adopted where the students do take the assessments online, but they also have to submit the work that how they got to that answer, and they grade based on, you know, not, sometimes they can see little inaccuracies, but they want to make sure they understand the steps. So there's other things that they can submit in addition to just the answers to a test.
Another thing, in the last 5 years or so, maybe last 10 years or so, every curriculum adoption we've done in our district is just so, there are so many pieces that weren't there 20 years ago. And so every language arts program has got an online portion, and the math program's got an online assessment tool. And so students can take a math test, and it's all based on certain standards, but everybody gets a different question. And then they can all log in through the portal through our school district, and then take the test that I assign. And then I can modify that test online for different students. I can give them different tests all on the same unit. So I can do a lot of diversification on my on that online platform.
And I'll just echo quickly kind of what Varro pointed out. There's only so much that we can control. And so for us in 6th grade, we've actually kind of gravitated towards open note assessments and kind of like rewarding the students who are taking notes and allowing them to use it, because even if you were to hypothetically say no notes, like you don't know if the notes are in the corner or something. And so so we've encouraged note taking, and again, students can use that on their assessments. For us, we don't require cameras for students. So again, we don't know if anyone is there, but obviously we encourage honesty and students just trying their best. We also have done for a while retakes with assessments, so students can retake and earn a better score as well. So I think the note-taking though option is pretty new for us this year. So that may continue in the future to, again, reward students who are focused and who are doing that. But yeah, there's only so much you can control, so you just try your best with that.
Okay, I'm going to. I think we've hit most of the questions. There was one about screen fatigue, and I know you guys, I mean, to be here on a Sunday, as well as being in class 5 days a week, have a lot of screen fatigue. So I don't, you know, but I was thinking, you know, just to end this, that each one of you could just say a few last words, and it's just been such a delight to have all of you together and just to hear your different opinions and actually similar opinions of what's going on. I do want to say I did try to get an a younger, kindergarten to second grade elementary school teacher to come, and I have to say that they're so overworked that I couldn't get them to contribute. But they're back in class, a lot of them, and hopefully not doing a hybrid, which I think puts more work on you. But they are back in class, and I just they just didn't have the time to come today. But why don't we just go in the order that you see yourself on the screen? We'll start with Todd, and why don't you each say a few words, and then we'll call it a.
Well, I want to thank everybody for. It is uplifting to see to have so many people here today on a Sunday afternoon to listen to us and share ideas. It's comforting to see colleagues and administrators safe setting where I mean I've written down about 5 ideas that you've shared already.
There's the fun of Zoom.
Oh no, you froze.
That's the fun of Zoom.
Yeah. I'm sure this happens in your classes. So this reminds me of some of the comics on late night TV. Why don't we, hopefully he'll unfreeze. Let's go on to Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been so nice to listen to everyone. I guess just in closing, it's online school has definitely presented its challenges for both students and teachers and of course families. But one thing that I'm really proud of, just as a student and watching the school district and my classmates, is how much we've been able to kind of resolve and, show resilience through all of this. My teachers have definitely come up with new teaching methods that have worked for our classes, and my classmates have, been so helpful in helping with each other and working together and working collaboratively. So if there's one thing, I guess like the silver lining from this whole situation, it's that, we're a lot more smart and creative than, we once thought that we were. So hopefully we still, take that collaborative spirit moving forward.
Lisa?
Did you say Lisa?
Yeah, Lisa, yeah.
Again, the technology's going in and out. I think I'm sharing the same thing. The collaboration piece has been something that has been a positive takeaway, not only here, but just even the privilege that I've had seeing the teachers when they need to brainstorm, just how much people are really, I'm seeing the good side of people right now, how much they're really helping one another. It's been awesome. So, and thank you everybody for your ideas and for having me.
Megan?
Yeah, I'll echo what everyone else said. Thank you again for having me and for all the panelists being here. So glad that we got Sarah to come as a student to share her perspective, and having counselors, administrators, and other teachers has been awesome. Yeah, and I think the one takeaway from this, differentiation was talked about earlier. Teachers always try to differentiate when students are in the classroom with what works best for each student. And so taking away from this year and into future years, I think that it's so great that PV, and I'm sure along with other districts, are looking into different options for families who, may choose not to return to the classroom ever. Like distance learning is working really well for them. And so how can we accommodate those families to stay within our district, right, and not go somewhere else, along with the independent study option. So I think that has been a great learning experience for everyone, and I hope that those options can continue in the future.
Okay, Varro?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you and share my thoughts and perspectives. Being at home, living alone, it's nice to be able to have a conversation with adults. So I appreciate that opportunity very much, and it was interesting to hear all the perspectives of the other teachers and the administrator. Brett, that was interesting, and Sarah, I took good notes when you were speaking, and because I want to make sure that I'm reaching my students in a way that is beneficial to them. I can think something's good, and then ultimately, I think the future of education is bright. because I think it's going to evolve in a very positive way because of this.
Okay, and we'll end with Brent.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. The reality is education will never be the same after this pandemic. And there are so many positives that will come out of it, so many new platforms and new approaches to education that, you know, it doesn't matter if it's a brand new teacher or a veteran teacher that I've heard from. So I think, you know, the world is turned upside down as of, you know, last March. And I would urge people, my message always to, you know, focus on what you can control, always assume the best intent, and know that we're all trying to move forward. And it's easy to sit there and pick away what's not happening. But when we spend energy and time on what is happening and celebrating those accomplishments, we're going to be better for it. And it's going to allow us to all move forward. So I really thank all of you guys and appreciate you inviting us this Sunday afternoon. I'm going to go for a walk with my kids. So I hope that you all get outside and get some vitamin D, because it is a beautiful day.
Yeah. Todd, I see you're back. Give us your last, sorry about that.
I don't know what happened, but I just want to say I'm grateful for it. This is kind of like a good energy drink for a week that's coming up. You guys being out here, just having people that are willing to listen and share ideas. I've appreciated the colleagues and an admin sharing with us. I'm grateful for this. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you everyone for joining us. This has been a real pleasure and a great learning experience. And this is recorded. We will have a newsletter that will summarize, and also this will come out as a recording that we'll send to you in about a week. So you'll be able to share it. Thank you so much.